The rain hammered against the glass of Mercy General's ER entrance like bullets trying to get in. Inside, the lights flickered. It was 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, usually the graveyard shift in more ways than one. But tonight, the graveyard was coming to them. Serena Blake pushed a mop bucket across the linoleum. The squeak of the wheels was the only sound in the hallway until the radio at the nurses' station screamed, "Inbound, GSW, multiple victims, VIP transport, ETA 2 minutes." The lazy atmosphere vanished. Dr. Aris, the lead trauma surgeon, snapped his gloves. He looked like a god preparing to judge the living and the dead. He didn't look at Serena. Nobody ever looked at Serena. To them, she was part of the furniture, a 30-something nurse who barely spoke, wore her scrubs too loose, and had a jagged, ugly scar running from her ear down to her collarbone. "Move, Blake!" head nurse Linda barked, shoving past her. "Get that bucket out of the way. Real nurses are working here." Serena didn't flinch. She didn't argue. She just moved the bucket, her eyes scanning the entrance doors. Her grip on the mop handle tightened, her knuckles turning white. She felt a vibration in the floor before she heard the sirens. Heavy vehicles. Armored. The double doors burst open. Paramedics didn't wheel the gurney in, they ran with it. On the bed lay a man in a torn suit, blood soaking through a makeshift tourniquet on his thigh. Senator Vance, the man who had just declared war on the cartel syndicates. "BP crashing," a medic yelled. "He's losing volume." Dr. Aris stepped in. "Get him to Trauma 1. Blake, stay back. Do not touch anything." Serena watched from the shadows. Her eyes narrowed. She wasn't looking at the patient. She was looking at the door. The paramedics looked too calm. One of them wasn't wearing standard-issue boots. He was wearing tactical combat treads. "Doctor?" "Wait," Serena said, her voice low but cutting through the noise. "I said back," Aris screamed. Serena took a step forward. "That man isn't a paramedic." Before Aris could sneer or reply, the paramedic reached into his medical bag. He didn't pull out a stethoscope. He pulled out a suppressed MP7 submachine gun. The silencer coughed. "Phut, phut." The security guard at the door dropped. The screaming started. Serena didn't scream. She dropped low, sliding into the darkness behind the reception desk, just as the lights were cut. The hospital was no longer a place of healing, it was a kill box. Darkness swallowed the ER, broken only by the sweeping red beams of tactical laser sights. Crouched behind the heavy oak of the reception desk, Serena controlled her breathing. In, hold for 4, out for 4. Her heart rate dropped while everyone else's spiked. She closed her eyes for a second, fighting the flashback. 6 hours earlier. The break room was bright and smelled of stale coffee. Dr. Aris was holding court with 3 residents, laughing. "So I told admin, why do we even pay her a nurse's salary?" Aris chuckled, gesturing towards Serena, who was silently wiping down a counter in the corner. "She's basically a glorified janitor. Look at her. No ambition, no spark, just exists." The residents giggled. "Hey, Blake," Aris called out. "When you're done with the counter, there's vomit in Bay 3. Handle it." Serena had paused just for a microsecond. The scar on her neck burned, a phantom pain from a life she had buried in redacted files and classified graves. She could have broken Aris's wrist in 3 places before he blinked. She could have listed the 14 ways to kill a man with a tongue depressor. Instead, she had nodded. "Yes, doctor." "Pathetic," she heard him whisper as she walked away. Now, the memory dissolved into the terrifying reality of the present. The gunmen were moving with precision. This wasn't a gang hit. This was a Tier 1 extraction team. They were sweeping the room, checking faces. "Find the senator," a voice commanded, deep, heavily accented. "Kill the witnesses. No loose ends." Serena peeked over the rim of the desk. Dr. Aris was cowering under a gurney, sobbing quietly. Head nurse Linda was frozen against the wall, hyperventilating. The lead gunman, a giant of a man wearing a balaclava, walked towards Aris. He raised his weapon. Aris squeezed his eyes shut, waiting to die. Serena looked at her hands. They were trembling, and not from fear, but from adrenaline. She had promised herself she was done. She had promised the outcome of her last mission in Kabul would be the end of the Wraith. But looking at the terrified staff who had mocked her for years, she realized something. They were annoying, arrogant, and cruel, but they were civilians, and on her watch, civilians didn't die. Serena Blake stood up. She didn't have a gun, she had a mop bucket, a pen light, and the element of surprise. The leader turned, sensing movement. "Target," he grunted. Serena didn't run away, she ran at him. The distance between the reception desk and the lead gunman was 20 feet. Serena crossed it in 2 seconds. The gunman fired. Phut, phut, phut. Bullets shattered the computer monitors behind her, sending sparks showering down like fireworks. Serena slid on her knees, the friction burning through her scrub pants. She grabbed the rolling mop bucket she had been scolded for earlier and shoved it with every ounce of strength into the gunman's shins. The heavy industrial plastic slammed into bone. The gunman grunted, stumbling forward. His aim went wild. It wasn't enough to stop him, but it bought her a heartbeat. Serena launched herself upward. She didn't strike like a nurse. She struck like a viper. Her hand clamped over the slide of his weapon, jamming the mechanism, while her other hand drove a heavy metal ballpoint pen into the soft gap of his tactical vest, right into the brachial plexus cluster in his shoulder. The gunman roared, dropping the weapon as his arm went numb. "Run!" Serena screamed at the staff. "Get the patient to the freight elevator, now!" Dr. Eris stared at her, his mouth hanging open. The quiet, pathetic woman who cleaned up vomit was currently holding a 250-pound mercenary in a chokehold. "I said move, Eris!" Serena's voice was unrecognizable. It was command voice, pure steel. The spell broke. Eris scrambled, grabbing the senator's gurney. Linda and the residents helped, pushing the heavy bed through the double doors toward the rear corridors. The gunman threw Serena off. She hit the wall hard, tasting blood. He pulled a combat knife from his belt. The blade was 8 inches of serrated, matte black steel. "You have training," the gunman growled, circling her. He spoke into his radio. "Team 2, converge on the lobby. We have complications." Serena stood up, wiping blood from her lip. She assumed a defensive stance, feet wide, center of gravity low, hands open. It wasn't the stance of a self-defense class graduate. It was Krav Maga, modified for lethal application. "You're in my hospital," Serena whispered. Thunder cracked outside, shaking the building. The emergency lights bathed the hallway in a sickly red glow. "Who are you?" the gunman asked, stepping closer. "I'm just the janitor," Serena said. She grabbed a fire extinguisher off the wall. She didn't swing it. She pulled the pin and blasted a cloud of chemical powder into his face. As he blinded, she swung the heavy canister into his temple. Clang! He went down, but the radio on his chest crackled. "Team 2 inbound. We are breaching the north wing." She wasn't safe. Nobody was. Serena sprinted down the corridor, her sneakers squeaking on the polished floor. She needed to catch up with Eris and the senator. The hospital was a labyrinth, and she knew every inch of it. She knew which doors squeaked, which stairwells were locked, and where the cameras had blind spots. She found them in the sterile supply room on the 3rd floor. Eris was trying to bandage the senator's leg with shaking hands. The senator, Senator Vance, was pale, sweating profusely. "He's crashing again," Eris panicked. "I need an OR. I can't fix this here." Serena slammed the door and locked it. She shoved a heavy shelf in front of it. "Move," she said, pushing Eris aside. "Don't touch him, Blake. You're not qualified," Eris shouted, his arrogance returning despite his fear. Serena ignored him. She ripped open a sterile pack. She didn't look at the monitors. She looked at the patient. She pressed 2 fingers to Vance's neck, then checked his pupils. "Tension pneumothorax," she said flatly. "Bullet fragmented. One piece is in his thigh and the other nicked his lung. He's drowning in air." "We need a chest tube," Eris cried. "We don't have a kit." "We improvise," Serena said. She grabbed a 14-gauge angiocath needle and a finger of a latex glove. With a quick movement, she cut the tip off the glove finger and taped it over the needle hub, a makeshift one-way valve. "What are you doing? Are you insane?" Eris grabbed her arm. Serena spun on him. Her eyes were terrifyingly dead. "Doctor, if you touch me again, I will render you unconscious. Sit down and shut up." Eris sat. Serena located the second intercostal space on the senator's chest. "This will hurt," she whispered to the semi-conscious man. She plunged the needle in. A hiss of escaping air filled the room. The senator gasped, his chest finally expanding. Color returned to his face. Vance blinked, his eyes focusing on Serena. He looked at her technique, then his eyes drifted down to her arm, where her scrub sleeve had torn. A faint, old tattoo was visible, a winged dagger wrapped in thorns. "The 75th. Ranger Medic?" Vance wheezed. Serena quickly pulled her sleeve down. "Save your breath, Senator." "Who are you?" Vance whispered. "Nobody," Serena replied. Suddenly, the PA system crackled to life. It wasn't the hospital administrator, it was the voice of the mercenary leader. "Dr. Eris, we know you are on the 3rd floor. We have the thermal scans. Give us the senator, and you walk away. Keep him, and we burn the building." Eris looked at the intercom, then at Serena. His eyes shifted. Panic replaced reason. The silence in the supply room was heavy, broken only by the senator's ragged breathing. "They know," Eris whispered. He stood up slowly. "They know we're here." "They're bluffing," Serena said, checking the magazine of the pistol she had taken from the first gunman. It had 12 rounds. Not enough. "They're trying to flush us out. If we open that door, we're dead." "You heard him," Eris hissed. "He said I could walk away." "He's a cleaner, Eris. No witnesses," Serena said, scanning the room for exits. There was a vent grate near the ceiling. Tight, but she could fit. The senator couldn't. "I have a family," Eris said, his voice trembling. He backed away toward the barricaded door. "Don't do it," Serena warned. She didn't aim the gun at him, she was trained better than that, but her posture shifted to ready. "I'm the chief of surgery," Eris yelled, his ego crumbling into cowardice. "I'm not dying for a political stunt." He lunged for the shelf blocking the door. "Eris, stop!" He shoved the shelf. It scraped loudly against the floor. "We're in here!" Eris screamed at the top of his lungs. "I'm coming out! Don't shoot!" Serena cursed. The element of stealth was gone. She heard heavy boots running down the hallway. "You idiot!" she hissed. She grabbed a canister of ether from the chemical shelf and a roll of gauze. "Senator, can you move?" "If I have to," Vance gritted out. The door handle jiggled. Then a shotgun blast blew the lock off. The door swung open. Eris threw his hands up. "I surrender! She has the gun! The nurse has the gun!" He pointed right at Serena. 2 mercenaries stepped into the doorway, weapons raised. They looked at Eris, then at Serena. The lead merc smirked beneath his mask. "Thank you, Doctor." He raised his rifle and shot Eris in the leg. Eris screamed and collapsed. "I said no loose ends," the merc laughed. He turned his aim to Serena. But Serena wasn't there. In the confusion of Eris's scream, she had kicked out the ceiling tiles and hauled herself into the crawl space above. "Ceiling!" the merc yelled. They sprayed bullets into the acoustic tiles. Dust and debris rained down. But Serena was already moving, crawling through the darkness of the plenum space, dust filling her lungs. She wasn't fleeing, she was flanking. She had the high ground now, and she had the ether. The crawl space was a claustrophobic nightmare of wires, pipes, and fiberglass insulation. Serena dragged herself over the HVAC ducts, the jagged metal of the ceiling grid slicing into her palms. Below her, she could hear the mercenaries shouting, their boots thudding against the tile. "She's in the vents! Flush her out!" Bullets punched through the floor of the crawl space, inches from her face. They were tracking her movement by the sound of her weight shifting. Serena stopped. She needed to change the game. She wasn't a rat in a maze. She was a predator in the canopy. She reached into her pocket. She still had the ether canister and the lighter she had swiped from the break room, a world's best dad Zippo Linda had confiscated from a patient. She crawled toward the main air intake for the surgical wing. Below, the mercenaries had the senator cornered in the supply room. Vance was trying to hold Eris's belt as a tourniquet for the doctor's shot leg. "Where is the girl?" the leader demanded, stepping over the weeping surgeon. "I don't know. She's crazy," Eris sobbed. Up above, Serena found the intake fan. It was massive, pulling air from the ducts to circulate into the sterile rooms. She popped the cap on the ether canister. Chemistry 101, she thought. Ether is highly flammable and heavier than air, but in a ventilation system, it's an anesthetic gas. She poured the liquid onto the spinning blades of the intake fan. The fumes were instantly atomized and blasted into the room below. She held her breath. Down below, the mercenaries started coughing. "Gas!" one yelled. "Masks up!" But they were too slow. The heavy, sweet smell filled the small room instantly. The leader staggered, his vision blurring. He fired blindly into the ceiling, but his coordination was gone. He slumped against the wall, sliding down. Serena kicked the vent grate open and dropped down like a stone. She landed in a crouch amidst the groggy, stumbling hit squad. She didn't use the gun. A gunshot was too loud, it would draw the others. She grabbed a scalpel from the open tray on the floor. It was brutal. It was efficient. It was silent. In less than 10 seconds, 3 men were incapacitated. Tendons slashed, pressure points struck. She grabbed the senator and hauled him up. "We have to move." The others heard the shots. "You," stared Vance at her, his eyes wide. "You took out a kill squad with a chemical spill and a knife?" "I used what was available," Serena said. "Now walk." She looked at Eris, who was bleeding on the floor, conscious but terrified. "Help me," he begged. Serena paused. He had sold her out. He deserved to be left. She grabbed him by the collar and dragged him up. "You're lucky I took an oath, Eris. Move." They reached the east wing, but the exits were blocked. The storm outside had intensified, knocking out the city grid completely. The hospital was running on backup generators, and the lights were dying one by one. "We're trapped," Eris moaned, limping heavily. "Not yet," Serena said. She shoved them into the medical gas storage room, the oxygen room. It was a dangerous place to be during a firefight. Rows of high-pressure oxygen, nitrogen, and nitrous oxide tanks lined the walls. One stray bullet could turn the room into a bomb. "This is a dead end," Eris cried. "It's an armory," Serena corrected. She scanned the room. Heavy tanks, wrenches, rubber tubing, a defibrillator on the crash cart in the corner. "Senator, barricade the door. Eris, give me your belt." "Why? Just give it to me." Serena worked fast. She tipped a massive canister of liquid nitrogen onto its side, aiming the nozzle at the door. She rigged a wire from the handle to the door frame. "What happens when they open the door?" Vance asked, impressed. "Flash freeze. Thermal shock. It'll buy us 6 seconds." She then grabbed the defibrillator paddles. She cut the power cord and stripped the wires, wrapping them around the metal handle of the second door, the one leading to the loading dock. "Charging to 360 joules, she muttered, turning the dial. The machine whined. The main door handle turned. Then came the banging. "Open up, we know you're in there." The door was kicked open. The wire pulled. The nitrogen valve blasted open. A white cloud of supercooled gas roared out, hitting the first 2 mercenaries. They screamed as the cold burned their skin and froze the moisture in their eyes instantly. They fell back, blinded and choking. "Now!" Serena yelled. She grabbed a wrench and threw it through the confusion, shattering the overhead light. Darkness fell. Serena moved into the cloud. She was a ghost in the mist. She used the heavy oxygen tank as a battering ram, swinging it into the ribs of the third man. But then, a red laser dot appeared on her chest. The leader. The one she thought she had lost in the lobby. He was standing in the doorway, wearing thermal goggles. The nitrogen cloud didn't hide her heat signature. "Game over, little nurse," he said.
He pulled the trigger. The bullet hit Serena in the shoulder. The impact spun her around, slamming her against the metal racks. Pain, white-hot and searing, exploded in her left side. She slid to the floor, clutching the wound. Blood seeped through her fingers, dark and slick. "No!" Vance shouted, trying to lunge, but his leg gave out. The leader stepped into the room, his boots crunching on the frozen floor. He kicked the wrench away from Serena's hand. He aimed his pistol at her head. "You're good," the mercenary said, his voice distorted by his gas mask. "Better than good. Black Ops? CIA? You don't learn that in nursing school." Serena looked up, her vision tunneling. She laughed. It was a wet, ragged sound. "I was a field medic, Unit 77. The mercenary paused. Even he knew the legend of Unit 77, the ghost unit. "They're all dead," Serena whispered. "Not all of them." She glanced at the floor. The liquid nitrogen was spreading, creating a fog layer, but near her hand was a loose, high-pressure oxygen hose she had severed earlier. "Say goodbye," the mercenary said. Serena grabbed the hose and twisted the valve on the main tank behind her. Pure oxygen hissed out at 2,000 psi. She didn't aim it at him. She aimed it at the spark. With her last ounce of strength, she kicked the crash cart. The defibrillator paddles, still charged and stripped, clattered together on the metal floor. Zap. A spark. Pure oxygen plus spark equals explosion. It wasn't a nuclear bomb, but in a confined space, the rapid combustion created a shockwave. A fireball erupted, blasting the mercenary backward out the door. The concussion knocked the wind out of everyone. The sprinkler system triggered instantly, drenching the room in water. Serena lay on the floor, ears ringing, the fire suppression water mixing with her blood. She tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't work. Dr. Aris crawled over to her. For the first time, there was no arrogance in his eyes, only awe and shame. "Blake, Serena," he stammered. He put his hands on her wound. "I've got you. I'm applying pressure." "Senator," Serena mumbled. "He's safe. You blew them to hell." Sirens wailed outside. Not police sirens. Black SUVs, low-frequency helicopters, the cavalry. The doors to the loading dock burst open. Men in FBI jackets stormed in, weapons drawn. "Federal agents, drop your weapons!" They saw the carnage. Frozen mercenaries, burned mercenaries, and a nurse bleeding out on the floor. "Secure the VIP," an agent yelled. They rushed to Vance. They ignored Serena. "No," Vance shouted, pointing at her. "She's the one. Help her!" An agent grabbed Serena's arm, pulling her up roughly. He saw the gun on the floor near her. "Suspect secured," he yelled. He slapped cuffs on her wrists, wrenching her injured shoulder. "No," Serena whispered. She saved them, and now she was being arrested for it. The interrogation room was cold. Serena sat handcuffed to the table, her shoulder bandaged but throbbing. She had been there for 6 hours. The mirror on the wall was one way. She knew who was behind it. The door opened. It wasn't a cop. It was a 4-star general, General Holloway. He walked in, carrying a thick file. He placed it on the table. He didn't sit. He stood at attention. "Uncuff her," he ordered the MP guarding the door. "Sir, she's a suspect in a multiple homicide." "I said, uncuff her, soldier," Holloway barked. The MP scrabbled to unlock the cuffs. Serena rubbed her wrists, her face impassive. "Sergeant Blake," Holloway said softly, "you were supposed to be dead. We buried an empty coffin in Arlington 5 years ago." "I like being dead, General," Serena said, her voice raspy. "It's quieter." Holloway opened the file. It showed blurry photos of the hospital fight. "You took down a 12-man extraction team from the Kavarov syndicate, single-handedly, with cleaning supplies. I had help. Dr. Aris applied a tourniquet." "Dr. Aris is currently telling every news outlet that he fought them off. He's calling himself the hero of Mercy General." Serena shrugged. Let him have it. He needs the validation. I just need to go home. It's not that simple, Holloway said. Senator Vance told us everything. He knows who you are. The press is asking questions about the mystery nurse. If we let you walk out that door, your cover is blown. The people who hunted your unit, they'll come for you again. Serena looked at the general. So, what's the offer? Come back in, Holloway said. We need instructors. We need ghosts. Serena stood up. She walked to the mirror, looking at her reflection, the scar on her neck, the tired eyes. I'm not a soldier anymore, General. I'm a nurse. You're a weapon, Serena. You can't change what you are. Watch me. She turned back to him. I'm leaving. If you try to stop me, I'll leak the files about what really happened in Kabul. Holloway stared at her for a long moment. Then he closed the file. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a coin, a unit challenge coin. He slid it across the table. Dismissed, Sergeant. 3 days later, Mercy General was back to normal, mostly. The bullet holes were plastered over. The blood was scrubbed away. Dr. Eris was on the TV in the break room, giving an interview. It was pure instinct, Eris was saying to the reporter, looking grave. I saw the gunman and I knew I had to protect my patients. I just reacted. Nurse Linda watched the screen, shaking her head. What a load of crap. She looked around the nurses' station. Hey, has anyone seen Blake? The quiet one? The janitor nurse? A resident asked. No, she didn't show up for shift today. Admin says she resigned, left no forwarding address. Linda sighed. Probably for the best. Poor girl. She was probably traumatized hiding in that closet while Eris did all the fighting. At the back of the room, a new orderly was emptying the trash. He paused, looking at the TV, then at the spot where Serena used to stand. He noticed something taped to the underside of the counter. He peeled it off. It was a small Polaroid photo. It showed Dr. Eris cowering under the desk, weeping, while Serena stood in the foreground, silhouette blurry, holding a mop handle like a spear. On the back, written in Sharpie, "Be nice to the next one." The orderly smiled and slipped the photo into his pocket. Miles away, a gray Greyhound bus rolled down the highway, heading west into the sunset. Serena sat in the back row, wearing a hoodie and headphones. She watched the landscape blur by. Her shoulder ached, but it was a good ache, a reminder that she was alive. She pulled a small notebook from her bag. She crossed out Mercy General. Below it, she wrote, St. Mary's Hospital, Seattle. She wasn't done. There were hospitals everywhere. There were arrogant doctors everywhere, and there were always people who needed protection when the lights went out. The bus turned a corner and the light hit her face. For the first time in years, the ghost of Ward 4 smiled. Never underestimate the quiet nurse.